Hello, welcome to this live show from Portugal. My name is Joana Pinhão and I'm the co-owner and winemaker for Somnium Douro in the Douro Valley in Portugal. And I'll be here today showing our project and trying to make you understand and then a little bit of our wines. First, and before we start, I would have to send all my thoughts to people who are being heavily impacted by coronavirus. It's been globally threatening our work, how we reunite with friends and family. Not different for us here. We are still in quarantine and still in emergency state in Portugal. So for us, probably here, because we do live in the countryside, it's easier to handle the days. We work in the vineyards, we work in the winery. We can move around, we can catch some fresh air. Unfortunately today we cannot do the show outside because it's pouring rain and it's not the best of weather. Otherwise it would be much easier for us to be outside to do this live, and much more pleasing for you all at home and then cannot leave your homes. So I'm just going to start by explaining a little bit about our project and then having a few highlights about the Douro Valley and all that we do. And hopefully you can enjoy this live. Just to explain you how this started, this is a young project. It was thought a long time ago, around 15 years ago, with a very good friend, colleague, and also winemaker. We studied together in an agronomy school. His name is Rui Lopes, and he's the co-owner and winemaker also with this project with me. We always had the dream, the Somnium, of doing a wine together after leaving university. We went separate ways. He started working in Alentejo and I moved immediately after university to the Douro Valley. And we reunited in the Douro in 2011. So our first wine from this project was a 2011 white wine. And it started with a very simple phrase, just that I found the perfect vineyard. And it is truly a perfect vineyard. It's a small site under 1 hectare in the region of Mursa district. When we saw it, we thought that it would be perfect for us to start our project in a vintage that for most it's probably the best vintage of the century. For some, it's the best vintage of the century, 2011. It was a tough vintage, very, very warm and very dry year, but it was a very good one to start with. I'm just going to give you also a visually where we at in Portugal. Portugal is the most western country in Europe. It's a small rectangular with not more than 10 million inhabitants, so we're quite small country but quite diverse. And I'm going to show you on the map, hopefully you can see it correctly, where we're at in Portugal. We are in the northeast part of the valley. If you see that red spot on top, we are a small rectangular, and on the northeast part, it's where the Douro Valley is at, very close to the Spanish border. It's divided, as you see here in the image, in these 3 small subregions. You have here what we call Cima Corgo, which is closest to the Atlantic Ocean, more Atlantic influenced. We have the Cima Corgo subregion and then Douro Superior. Us, in particular, at the project at Somnium, We are right in the heart of what is the Cima Corgo wine region, in one of Douro's tributaries river, which is here, the Douro River, and we work with 2 small sites for our white wine and 2 small sites for our red wines, in a mixture between what is low altitude vineyards and higher altitude vineyards already on the top of the hills. It's a very diverse region. People who do know it know its extreme and dramatic landscape, built in terraces, patamares, vertical vineyards. And this is all where our dream started, our Somnium started in 2011. So this Douro wine region, it's quite unique. It's UNESCO World Heritage, and it's been around for thousands of years, producing grapes and vines, and it's quite impressive. So hopefully when everything passes and we are able to travel, you can come and visit us again in the Douro. It will be a pleasure to welcome you here in the Douro Valley. I'm going to show you on the next map, just for you to have an idea of what is the region. Here we have, in terms of what is the density of plantation in the Douro. The Douro it's huge in terms of area. We have around 250,000 hectares of the demarcated wine region, one of the first demarcated wine regions, or the first regulated demarcated wine region in the world. Of this 250,000 hectares, 45,000 roughly, 18% are vineyards. And as you can see, it starts more or less in the middle of what is the northern part of Portugal, and goes towards the Spanish border. And the further you go inland, the driest and the warmest it gets, so almost like a desertic climate in some of the vintages, where they're very dry and very warm. For you to have an idea, if you go to Cima Corgo, which you see here on the left, and if you go to Douro Superior, the difference in rainfall can range from 500 to 600 millimeters in a year, so it's quite different. And these vineyards are quite unique. When we talk about the vineyards in the Douro, we must not forget that it's mostly old vines, traditional field blends, so all the varietals are mixed in the vineyards, built in stone terraces, very high plantation, around 6,000, 7,000 plants per hectare in the traditional vineyards, both post-phylloxera vineyards. And then the more you go to the last 2-3 decades, they have been dramatically changed. The landscape, with a few helps of supports of the community, European community, to restructure the old vines and make it more mechanized. What happened is that people starting building in terraces, so where you can get in with tractors and do a lot of the works mechanically, which you cannot do in the old vines, and also vertical planting vineyards. And there you can have a bit more plants per hectare and have a little bit more covered the soil in what you do. These vineyards are quite beautiful and quite dramatic. Us at the Somnium project, we work only with old vines, so all the work has to be done manually, which in the last year has been very hard to find people to work in the vines, and I think it's a factor that's going to, in a long term or even medium term, be very complicated for most of viticultures in the region and wine producers. And just for you to have an idea, I'm going to show you a couple of pictures of what is the vineyards in the Douro. The first picture will be the traditional terraces with the stone walls, and as you see, the plantation, it's The density is very high, have around 6,000 vines per hectare, and it's non-mechanized. Most of the work, if you go away from the conventional viticulture and do more traditional and low intervention viticulture, all the work has to be done by horse, thought through the vines. All the pruning, all the fertilization, everything has to be done by hand. All the harvest has to be done by hand. So instead of having a harvest machine, we have to rely on people to come and work in a very difficult landscape where you can easily have inclination that can reach easily 30% in some vines, especially in the vertical planted vineyards. And this has been along the years, has been people trying to protect, again, the traditional vines, knowing that they are producing very little, production per hectare is quite low. People who do sell grapes mostly for big companies probably might not find it very interesting to continue to maintain such vineyards because the costs of producing per hectare are quite high. But it's still for me and for us at Somnium where our best wines come from. So old vines, field blends. So we have in these old vineyards more than 25 different varietals planted. So only Portuguese varietals. We don't work with any international varietal. And traditional Douro varietals. So we try to work with what the Douro has given us and trying to make the most out of it and try people to taste the true flavor of the Douro Valley. So this is a traditional vineyards post phylloxera after most of the vineyards died in Europe and we have to been regrafted in American rootstock. All the vineyards were planted in such a form like you see here in this picture. And in late 70s, beginning of the 80s, it changed to a more mechanized style as you see here. So it's here on this one, it's what we call patamares. So it's mechanized vineyards. You can enter with a tractor. You have it planted in 1 or 2 lines of vineyards, and you can do most of the work with a tractor, with the exception of the harvest, which has to be done by hand. On this side, you have the vertical planted ones. Here it can be quite dramatic, the inclination. You have vineyards around 30, sometimes 40%. 40%, you're already pushing a little bit more. With 40%, you should be doing patamares to make it more easy for people to work. Otherwise, it will be almost impossible to do any work here. But these are the new 20th century vineyards. Lower number of plants per hectare, around 3,000, 4,000 plants in the patamares, and in the vertical vineyards you can reach around 5,000 plants, more or less. But and here most of this is already planted by varietal. So the old vines on the top, most of them are field blends, although there are a few producers also nowadays doing replicas of what is the old vines. So in the new vineyards they're planting, they're doing it also with field blends, which I find it's revigorating. I think it can work really, really well. And the ones that do it in terraces or start doing it in terraces, they're already planted mostly by varietal. So Portugal is known for having a huge number of varieties, 250, 300 autochthon varietals recognized in Portugal. It's a huge variability between north and south in such a tiny country. And it's been quite intriguing to make wines where it's not the variety that tells you what they've become, but it's the mixture and it's the sense of place, it's the soil, it's the temperature, it's the altitude, the exposition And then you have 2025 that work. And they work because at the time people wanted, and most people in the Douro sold grapes. So they could not afford of having a very good vintage one year and a very poor one the next year. So what they did, they tried to plant what they thought was the most adapted to the region. More resistant to heat, the one known for their color, high productive grape varieties, and the ones that would maintain them in having an even crop every vintage. And that's why the diversity, and it's for me still a great way to plant and a great way to balance the wines. In Portugal, as I said, we have a lot of varietals. For most of you, probably for the last years, the most talk about varietal, it's probably Touriga Nacional. And Touriga Nacional it's probably what we call four-wheel drive varietal. It's very adapted to all the wine regions. It's very versatile from north to south. And the Douro, it's no different. But it's not by far the most important still today in percentages in the Douro Valley. It's been growing because it's incredible for blending and also as a single varietal. But people might have an idea that the Touriga Nacional, it's widely planted. It's probably one of the most planted in percentage varieties in Douro, and that's not true. With such diversity, you have much more varieties that are much more representative. For instance, in Douro, and it's for me one of the best varieties in the Douro Valley. It's Touriga Franca, and it's a variety that's still the highest planted variety in the Douro. It's bigger berries, bigger bunch, has to be in the right place, but if planted in half slopes, south face, and can be incredible. And that's the reason why it's called the flower of the Douro, because it's truly quite unique. And I'm going to just show you here a graphic where I can try for you to see in terms of percentage what I was talking about. So if we see in terms of percentages, and reaching here it's only 22%, because you have so many varietals in the Douro that in the old vines you don't have one that's the predominant on the others, and here you have the percentage of varieties more or less of what you have in the Douro wine region. So you have as first varietal the Touriga Franca that I was talking about. It's almost 22% of you have planted that have planted in the Douro. You have then Tinta Roriz, which for people who might not know the Portuguese name, it's the same varietal as the Tempranillo in Spain, and it's around half of what is the percentage of the Touriga Franca. And Tinta Barroca, which is probably the base, the heart of most of the port wines. Very early ripening variety, can reach very high sugar levels very early in this ripening season, and it's a great texture varietal, which is around 11%. Then you have, if you've seen red, Tinta Amarela, Mourisco, Malvasia Preta, Tinta Carvalho, and then you see on this graph, because you have so many different varietals, the Touriga Nacional, it's a bit over 2% of what is the varieties in the demarcated Douro region. So it's funny to see that probably Touriga Nacional, it is the most talked about Portuguese varietal, and that has to do with what I said before. It's a four-wheel drive varietal that lives in the country and adapts in all wine regions in the country. Its best expression probably is the Douro Valley, the Down region, but it works really well in the Douro Valley, especially also for port wine and for Douro blends. Then we have trying to tell you a little bit about the varieties and also our wines, and trying to, after explaining you the old vines, more younger vineyards, and blends, field blends, single varieties. I think I can now explain a little bit of what is our project. Hopefully, in a new live that we might do, I can show you around the vineyards and show you around the winery and where we work. Today, unfortunately, that was not possible. And for you that are joining now, my name is Joana Pinhão. I'm the co-owner and winemaker for Somnium Douro in Douro Valley, Portugal, and I'm here introducing our project together with T. Edward Wines, which is our importer for US and for New York City, and it was our first importer for the export market. So they were the early ones to believe in the project and to bring the wines in, and for us it's incredible. And I'm going to show you the wines that we make and explain you a little bit about them. So the first wine we make, it's the Somnium White. So, like I told you, we work mostly with only work with old vines. So, the Somnium White comes from a 70-year-old vineyard. It's two small sites, one in Candedo, which is a very small place close to Mursa district in the north part of the demarcated wine region. It's vineyards in altitude, so we are talking about 500 meters altitude in average, and it's old vines and field blends. So we have in this wine around 12 different varietals, all mixed planted in the old vines, and our goal is to make a distinct wine of the Douro Valley. Is trying to express the sense of place, the varietals, the soil. For this, it's mostly schist soils, and then we have a small parcel already in transition between schist and granite. And the goal was to make a wine that's complex, that's texture, that has depth of flavors. It's not very fruit driven, but that was not our goal, to make it very, very fruit driven. It has quite a pronounced minerality, and I think it's a very gastronomic wine, and a wine that has a huge potential to age. The wine we have now, and that's the wine that's also with you there in New York City, it's this 2017 white, and it's a wine that comes from those 70-year-old vines. It's fermented in barrel and small 225-liter barriques, 100% French oak barriques, and it's fermented in barrel and then aged for 12 months in barrel, and then bottled. And normally we keep it more or less 1 year more in bottle, so that it can all come together in bottle, because sometimes wines are put in the market quite early. And so we decided to keep it a bit longer in the cellar and then release it when we think that you would appreciate it a little bit more. So it's a wine that we started in 2011. The first vintage we only made 600 bottles. It was an experiment just to see how it go. And then we were slowly increasing the number of bottles we made of this wine. Nowadays, we are making around 3,000 bottles of the Somnium White. So this was our first wine that we thought together, me and Rui, in this project. And the goal is trying to find more vineyards, to be able to continue to express what we feel can be the quality of the Douro wine region. And it's an incredible wine region. It's probably the most incredible to visit, and only when you reach us, you can have the dimension of of the magnitude of what is the Douro. We see it on pictures, we see it, and we think, okay, it's quite nice, it's quite steep, but it's a huge wine region. And so and this is a little bit of what we do in terms of the white wines. So it's a blend, but it has mostly 4 varietals in these old vines. It's 12 varietals in the blend, but mostly Rabigato, Códega do Lourinho, Viuzinho, and Gouveio. So only Portuguese varietals in the blend. Then in our second wine, which is a new wine in the portfolio, it's our Somnium Douro Red. So the red was born a bit later on in time. The white we started in 2011. This red wine we started in 2014. Again, we did an experiment. It was only 2 barrels to see if the grapes were good enough for what we had thought of the Douro, to make a more fresh, a more fine, more elegant red wine. And so this one that we are now here showing, it's the 2017 red, and it's again old vines. Here we talk about 2 different sites. One lower in altitude in the Douro, focusing on old vines and infill blends, where we have mostly Touriga Franca planted in that old vineyard. And then a bit further up, if you go a bit further up, Pinhão Valley, which is one of the Douro River tributaries. It's Pinhão River, and in this valley, if you go a little bit north from Douro River towards Pinhão River and go up the valley, you'll find a small village called Alijó, and we have our second vineyard in Alijó, which is in high in the Douro, around 600 meters altitude. Again, a very old vineyard, a field blend, but there what we have mostly planted in that old vine is Tinta Amarela and Tinta Barroca, which gives a very unique character to the wine, more earthy feel to what you have in the blend, together with all the others. So it's a wine it's elegant, it's fresh, very nice acidity, very dark violet color, and a lot of red berry fruit on the aromatics on the palate. It's for me a good expression of a more elegant Douro. And this is the 2017 vintage. First vintage was 14. In 15, which is a great year, we increased a little bit more number of bottles, and we did around 1,200 bottles of this wine. 16, unfortunately, with the hail, we had no 16 Douro Red. And then we skipped to this 2017, which is being now released. It's a new wine in the portfolio, and here we do it the traditional way. So all the grapes are fermented in lagage, all the grapes foot trodden for the entire fermentation, and then aged in barrel for 24 months before we bottle it. So here, like we do with the whites, we only work with used oak, so used French oak barrels. And then it's been released. It was bottled in the summer of 2019, and it's being released now. And we made around 2,400 bottles of these wines, and also a few magnums. So these are the 2 wines of our portfolio, a white and a red. And these are what we are showing to the world at the moment. And it's a project that me and Rui are very proud of, and we hope it to grow in the near future, together with a few more experiments that we have in the cellar with different vineyards, different soils, which can be also been shown in the future to you all. I think this is it was a good way to introduce you by far away our project. I'm very happy for the invitation, and I have to thank the other wines for the invitation. And it was good to be here for this 10-15 minutes to show you our project. I hope to see you again all soon, and to be able to talk with you again, and in a more warmful way. Thank you very much for watching. And like in the beginning, I have to tell you that like you there in US, in New York City, we are all hoping for the best and for this time to go on in a more easy manner. And thank you all for joining. I hope you enjoyed the tasting, and it was very nice to meet you here. And hope we see again soon. Hopefully not in this live, but probably live in New York City. Thank you very much, and see you next time. So 11 a.m. every morning, a different producer showing their wines. And the T. Edward morning show, 11 a.m. live. Hope to see you again soon. Take care, stay safe, and drink wine.